Okay. Let's discuss Maharaja, which I've just finished playing. I'd like to compare it primarily against other games of the system, but I do want to speak a little bit about our family. But I do want to speak a little bit again about the family as a whole. First of all, I'm not a big fan of it. I think I've said this before. There's too much luck. Well, not too much luck, but there's too much die rolling, too simplistic. It adequately kind of represents the flow of history at some level, I guess. But it doesn't really capture much of anything about the countries involved. They just want to own things. And they want to own them at certain times, and they want to sometimes they wander around, like we saw with the Muslims and the Marathas, where you don't feel like you've got some great goal. You're just collecting victory points, and that doesn't thrill me as a concept. All said, though, I found myself enjoying playing these games, especially solitaire. Maybe more than I should. Certainly more than I respect them. For this particular one, the components are quite nice. I mean, the board is very pretty, I think. So, Britannia is pretty enough, but the cards, functional, nothing fancy here, but one problem with the cards for me, and this is throughout the series, the information contained on them, this is the way you get better at the game, is you know what all the cards are. You know what's going to happen. The better your premonitions are as to how the game is likely to flow, the better you're going to be able to play it. Now, that's true with a lot of games. There's no question. If you don't know what to expect, you're sitting there kind of, whoop. But here, it feels like that is the major factor affecting your gameplay. Now, granted, you saw me make a couple of blunders, even though I knew what was going on, or maybe leaving an area empty that I should have taken, whatever. But I have found that, if you sit down with a bunch of new players in it, they have no idea about what's going to happen. And you really don't want to spend the time explaining that. One of the beauties of this system is the rules are what? 9 pages minus 2. 7 pages of rules. Fairly clear, fairly easy to read. Yes, I have to look up a couple of little things because it's different from one game to the next or whatever. But it's a really, really fast and easy game to teach. You can bring it to a group who's never seen it, has no idea what it is, and you can get them playing, feeling like they understand what's going on until, oh wow, Britannia case, that sure is a lot of Danes hitting me right now. Where'd they come from? It helps that the turn record track contains all this information, but come on, honestly, first time playing, you're not going to want to start studying that usually. There are some people who do. I usually rather would not play with that kind of person. They're usually the kind of person who studies any game that they're trying to play for winning. But I think that's necessary here, that you do to some extent need to be very aware of what happens. It's not really a studying issue, but after you've got a couple games under your belt, you know what's going to come. I was saying there were balance issues, and I'm very worried about that. When I look at the scores that I came up with on this, I have very seldomly seen a Britannia game this lopsided. Sometimes I've seen 120 to mid-90s or something, but this is a huge, huge span. Either all the players have to realize, wow, blue is really potent, we have to gang up on them. And that may work. But again, it won't work the first time, right? When you break open the game and start playing it, you're not going to remember that. But it may work in the same way that I think one has to do that with green in Britannia. But I even have some questions about that, because there seems to be a real... It seems like the power countries are the Guptas, the Mauryans, the Muslims, probably the Mughals. Those feel like things that are going to be hard to stop, and I think the Muslims at their prime are going to be very, very difficult to do much about. And as we saw here, they were kind of able to shunt things away so that the Marathas were able to survive longer. Now, we saw the Rajputans destroyed early, and they're probably one of those kind of fragile cultures that, like, you have to protect, but if you can keep scoring points for them for the whole game, because they do. I mean, I didn't even get my leader for them because they got wiped out so early. I'm not used to that kind of play in it. I think this one probably is less easy to pick up and just play and get a good game out of, just because I did that and didn't get a terribly good game out of it. But I think the first time I played this in opposed play, it was similarly not a great game. Not because of the system, not because of the players, whatever, but because the game was less balanced just by default. Certainly, there are ways to deal with it if you balance it. If you like this, the series, I would suggest picking this one up. If you live in Phoenix and you like the series, I have a copy. If you don't like it, if you don't know it yet, I'd probably go with Britannia first. You're going to pay more for a new copy of Britannia than you pay for a used copy of Maharaja, or maybe a used copy of Britannia, I'm not sure, because the bottom may have fallen out of the market on those. But I think it's a better game overall. I think it takes less tweaking. This one, I think, quite possibly might be just unbalanced to begin with. Alright, I'm going to send that up. I don't know what the hell I'm doing next. I got to decide quickly. I don't really have anything that's been boiling over or saying, yeah, I'm the game, you're doing me. Maybe Infidel. I kind of wanted to hold off on doing another tactical GMT series, but that's from the Men of Iron. That's fairly light. I should be able to pick that up pretty quickly. Trying to convince myself to start on the Battles of the Age of Reason. I really want to get those played. Oh yeah, somebody mentioned something in the intro thread to this, which was, and that's another thing I forgot to mention. Okay, so somebody mentioned, you might just convince me to play war games. This ain't a war game, folks. It just isn't. I mean, if you want to see war games, look at some of my other videos. This is a game that contains some sort of conflict in it, but it's like Axis and Allies or History of the World or Small World or Vinci or a whole bunch of other games, Civilization, that have some sort of conflict represented in them, but that's not what they're simulating. They're not war games. This is not a war game. Okay, the second thing is, when I was talking about components, this was the first game with counters that I saw with fully colored pictures of people on them. There may have been something earlier. This is like 91. But I found that a real shift, and we've definitely seen that become very popular across the board in the gaming community. I'm not sure how much I like it or dislike it. I like both sides, right? It's nice to see the pretty painted picture of a dude, but it's also a little less, in this it doesn't matter, but in some games you want just the information, because So when I'm playing, I have more of a question about it in something like Musket and Pike series, where there's significant information on the counters, and the picture's there. It's pretty. There's no question about that. But the counters are awfully busy. I haven't had a problem so far with that. I have been able to actually process pretty complex counters with these pictures on them. So I guess there's not a problem for me. But when I first saw these, really full color images on counters, and this has nothing to do with Maharaja anymore, but when I first saw them, my worry was, wow, some of those are on really, really, intricate looking, detailed amounts of information on a counter along with that picture. I don't know if that really helps. I kind of thought maybe the NATO symbols would be easier to recognize. I don't know if it's a big deal with Musket and Pike. We'll see if I get to an East Front game and have little pictures of dudes